Good morning. Thank you for having me. I am so glad this morning that we do not have to drive to be together. I don't know where you are in the world, but the wind is howling outside my window, and I'm glad I didn't have to be part of that. So here we are, a new world, right? Today's title was set prior to the election earlier this week, and it speaks to the fears being incubated on both sides of the proverbial aisle. I know Monday, I think everybody was on a razor's edge. I have been hearing reports of great anxiety as we waited for the election results, and I couldn't help but thinking that, I wasn't sharing that a whole lot. I did have to find myself being impatient with the process, but I had to remind myself to breathe and remember the process was unfolding exactly as it was expected to. And no amount of wanting it to go faster was going to move the needle. Our anxiety is formed by setting an expectation and then allowing beliefs of an impending apocalypse to create our reality. We set up a condition for failure, and then we do everything we can to make sure that that failure happens. I couldn't help but watching the news. People, especially out in the Southwest, where they were focusing that there just seems to be so much fear in that crowd. So much fear that something was being stolen from them. And I couldn't help but feel is that, wow, I just wish I could just wave my magic wand and let them know that there's enough for everybody. There's no shortage of spirit out there. There's no shortage of love in the universe. That we can all have everything we need. And that whatever we think happened this week, if we all just sort of sit back and let the fear wash over us, the sun will come out tomorrow and we will see a new beginning out of all of this. Spirit is whole and complete regardless of our anxieties. Whatever result the election produces is the result that we are ready to receive. I was talking 4 years ago telling people that, maybe if it turns out the way it turns out, it's because we need to work a little harder. We need to get this message out that love is the way. And hopefully with 4 years of experience, we were able to turn that corner just a little bit. If the election result shakes us up, we are handed an opportunity to revisit our beliefs and either adjust our thinking or strengthen our resolve. It gives us the opportunity to really look at, why am I so upset with this result? What is it I'm believing that makes me feel this way? Is this a good belief? And if it is, if you find out that, yeah, I really believe this, then, dig in and do what you have to do. Make it change later on. If, spirit is truth. So, if it follows that our search for truth must be thorough and complete. All evidence must be examined, verified, and acknowledged. False evidence must be exposed and dismissed. Likewise, valid evidence must be allowed to unfold and lead us toward our goal of spiritual fullness. In spirit, we learn the importance of standing for something, to be the light that dispels the darkness. Science of Mind teaching is filled with accolades to not be against something all the time. Spirit is a builder. Spirit wants to create things. In spirit, we must see the positive and allow the positive to be our experience flowing through us. Suppressing opposing voices is not victory, it is a delusion. Refusing to examine evidence does not negate the information it provides. It simply allows the truth to remain concealed. You know, there was a boy in my high school whose father expected him to be a star athlete. I've known this kid from elementary school, actually. And he was always just a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger, and a little bit more butch, if you will, because that was the way his father taught him to grow up. Contrary to what the appearance I project today, I was much smaller in those days, about half my physical size now. And I found his physical being quite imposing, and never wanted to play dodgeball against him. I always wanted him on my team. So, there was a fair amount of expectation that he would be a really good athlete. And he wasn't really encouraged from his family to focus on his education as much as his skills in the field. But it turned out in high school, there were better athletes, and his grades were not impressive. He was cut from the team. And he quickly morphed into a classic bully. He wore his anger on his sleeve, and no one wanted to be around him. We learned in time that he was living in fear. Fear of his father's disappointment. His own anger was a disguise. He was trying to prove that he was tough enough to earn his father's approval. Humans are often more comfortable with anger than we are with fear. Nobody wants to look like they're scared. Allowing fear to express as anger delays resolution of the fear and deepens the anger. Spirit is not fear. Spirit is not anger. Spirit is love. Spirit is a creative force. Through our beliefs, Spirit is always building new experiences for us. The science of mind teaches us to train our thinking toward positive, loving goals that align with spiritual principles. Spiritual principles are really simple to remember. Beauty, love, creativity, being in harmony with nature. All the good things that make us feel right, that don't leave that horrible pit in our stomach or keep us awake at night. These are the spiritual principles that we like to tell ourselves that we're constantly working toward, even though we do have our human moments. There is no need for us to oppose evil when we believe in good. Spirit is good and Spirit is infinite. There can be no end to the good because it is infinite, and therefore there is no place for evil if we are focused on the good. As darkness vanishes in the presence of light, any appearance of evil dissolves from our reality when we know only love. Again, going back to the Southwest, some of the news, one of the reporters I was watching actually pointed out that while there was this demonstration of fear and anger going on one side of the parking lot, he turned the cameras around to the other side, and there were people standing there who were clearly representing both sides of the argument. And they were standing together and talking and laughing and having a good time, understanding that they're just people. They had different ideas sometimes. They disagreed on how things should be done. But, here's one woman with a rainbow flag and a guy with a MAGA hat and an AK-47 strapped over his shoulder standing there laughing together. So there is hope, at least for those two, maybe. We can all take from their example and understand that if we lead with love, we can find commonality, we can find solid ground to stand on together and build going forward. Release our fears, release any idea of evil. This week, as a nation, we have chosen to embrace inclusion. We have chosen to build communities where everyone has the opportunity to learn, to prosper, and live free from the fear of a health emergency wiping out family savings in a heartbeat. We've chosen to work with our neighbors around the world to address the issues that affect all of us, issues that do not recognize borders. We have chosen to move our human evolution forward towards spiritual fulfillment. We recognize there are still brothers and sisters who do not yet fully understand how Spirit lives through us. People who do not recognize that evolution is built into our common consciousness. That's why Spirit has this building drive. That's why it's constantly creating. It's not creating the same thing over and over and over again. It gave us free will so that we could direct our beliefs, and Spirit simply thinks, I wouldn't have thought of that in a million years, but I guess I better go build it. This is what the guy wants. And our evolution continues. Our common consciousness grows ever closer toward spiritual fulfillment. We have moved away from just surviving day to day and moved closer to understanding that we are all one. We are all of the one mind and spirit. And that if we don't cross the finish line together, none of us finishes. Because there's only one of us in the race. Those of us who welcome these new directions have a responsibility to engage with love, to show by our words and deeds that these ideas are in alignment with Spirit. This is what God would do. This is what Jesus taught. This is what it means to be a spiritual being. To not necessarily have more than everybody else, but to make sure that everybody has enough. We have a responsibility to listen to the fears and allay them with facts. To accept emotional expressions as real and emphasize while we explore their roots so that truth can reveal itself. We're not going to shove our ideas down anybody's throat. It never works. Truth at the point of a gun has never been successful. It has been proven to fail again and again and again. The human spirit is stronger than any weapon. And regardless of how much suppression we put on people or how much we try to force them to believe what we believe, only in their own time, each of us, only in our own time, can accept spiritual truth and understand and live spiritual truth. It's how I found myself, fortunately, being a little less tense this week than a lot of the people around me. Because I knew in my heart, regardless of the outcome, I was still whole and complete in Spirit. And that Spirit was still going to be there because it's infinite. And if things didn't go the way I thought they should go, it's because Spirit had something more for me to do. Now, there's always something more to do. It's just the outside results kind of direct what we think is important today. There is a common misconception that the power of Spirit or God is separate and above us. If you've ever been out in the country or at sea during the night and you've seen the vastness of stars that populate our universe, you know that that is a mere token of the power of spirit. If you have been in the far north and seen the aurora borealis dancing in the night sky, then you know the splendor of spirit. If you've held a child in your arms, or even a puppy, you know the unconditional love of spirit that flows through us. The Bible teaches that we are created in God's image. And yet there is still the misconception that we are somehow separate from God. We are one in the same with God, or spirit, if your relationship with the word God is challenged. It is infinite. There is no other. Each of us is an individualization given free will to create our own experiences that in turn inform our common consciousness, those givens that we accept as true, whether true or not. I invite anyone who disagrees with our direction to question every choice our leaders make. Force them to justify their motivation and reasoning. Know at the end of the day, whether you can agree or not, that their actions are taken within the envelope of spiritual principle. There will always be a radical cutting edge. This is where new ideas originate, marinate, and extrapolate into an evolved common consciousness. We cannot, will not, do not stay in one place spiritually forever. It's impossible. Look at your lifetime. And if you're too young for that, look at the last 100 years of what has happened technologically. 100 years ago, automobiles were made out of wood and maxed out at 60 miles an hour. Airplanes were made out of canvas and maxed out at 90 miles an hour. In my lifetime, the technology has changed so dramatically. 100 years ago, you had to talk to an operator to talk to anybody else on the telephone. Nobody had a phone in their pocket. Now we all do. Things change constantly. Our common consciousness is growing closer and closer toward its spiritual fulfillment. We are not going to get there in this lifetime. They tell us our sun has 4 billion years. Maybe we'll make it in time, maybe we won't. But somewhere in the universe, somebody will. There will always be those who believe it is taking too long to evolve. And there will always be those who fear any deviation from the tried and the known. All of us are existing somewhere along this spectrum. And no matter where we find ourselves in life's journey, the sun will come out tomorrow, whether we choose to see it or not. So thank you.